She sits at a cafe table, surrounded by people, yet entirely alone. A cappuccino grows cold beside her as her fingers glide across her phone screen. Not in boredom, no, in hunger. Her eyes flicker between her reflection in the dark glass window and the blue glow of her screen. A like, a comment, a view, each one a hit, each one a tiny gasp of air in a life submerged in the need to be seen. But it's not love she's chasing. It never was. It's attention. She doesn't know it, but she's caught in a silent addiction. An addiction that doesn't leave bruises or broken bottles. Just an unshakable emptiness that grows louder with every notification. This is not vanity. This is not narcissism. This is survival. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And that's what she's living. An unconscious hunger, disguised as confidence. A compulsive need to be noticed, not for who she is, but for who she appears to be. She wants to be admired, not understood. Desired, not known. Loved? No. That requires being seen beyond the mask. And the mask is all she has. This isn't just about her. This is about all of us. A culture that rewards spectacle over substance. A generation taught to value presence over depth. A world that confuses affection with exposure. We are living in a society addicted to attention, where visibility has become the new intimacy, and silence feels like death. This is not a story about a woman. This is a mirror, and if we dare to look closely, we might see ourselves staring back. She walks into the room, and all eyes find her. Effortlessly, she commands attention, not with words, but with presence. There's a certain choreography to it. The subtle tilt of her head, the curated smile, the glance that lingers just long enough to leave an impression. People gravitate toward her like moths to light, and for a moment, she becomes the flame. But the truth is darker. She's not addicted to connection. She's addicted to applause. The crowd loves her, but when the room empties, when the claps fade and the lights dim, something inside her echoes louder than any applause ever could. Hollowness. This isn't a story of arrogance. It's a story of disconnection. Carl Jung spoke of the persona, the mask we wear to meet the expectations of society. It's useful, even necessary. But when the mask becomes our identity, we begin to lose the self behind it. The person becomes a performance, and the performance becomes the prison. She's the woman who thrives in groups, who glows under compliments, who lights up in public, but recoils when faced with intimacy. She can flirt across a dinner table with ease, but she will flinch at real vulnerability. Compliments? She's addicted to them. But genuine emotional intimacy? That feels like exposure. That feels like danger. Because applause is predictable, intimacy isn't. Applause gives her control. Intimacy requires surrender. This distinction is subtle, but profound. When someone is drawn to affection, they seek connection. They want to know and be known, to love and be loved. But when someone is addicted to attention, their desire is not for closeness, but for confirmation. They don't want your soul. They want your spotlight. This addiction often begins in childhood. For some, love was conditional. They were praised for being smart, pretty, talented, but not simply for being. Somewhere along the line, they learned love is earned through performance, not presence. So they became performers. They learned to win affection through achievements, charm, or beauty, but never through vulnerability, never through authenticity. To show weakness meant risking rejection. To show need meant being unworthy. So they hid, and in hiding, they created a persona so compelling, so magnetic, that people couldn't help but notice. But what no one sees is the cost of maintaining that performance, the exhaustion of constantly being on, the terror of silence, the fear of being ordinary. Applause became her substitute for love. The moment someone truly tries to get close, she pulls away. Not because she doesn't care, but because she doesn't know how to exist without the mask. She confuses admiration with affection, attention with connection, and applause with worth. This is the tragedy of the attention addict. They are surrounded by people, yet starving for intimacy. You'll often hear her say things like, "People are obsessed with me," or "Everyone wants me." But when you look closely, you'll see the pattern. Many admirers, few deep relationships, many conversations, no real closeness. Everyone wants her, but no one truly knows her. And that's the point. Because the minute someone tries to really know her, she vanishes behind sarcasm, detachment, or defensiveness. She'll ghost, deflect, or even sabotage, not because she's cruel, but because she's scared. Because letting someone in would mean showing the parts of herself that aren't curated, and those are the parts she fears are unlovable. This is where Jung's idea of the shadow becomes crucial. The parts of ourselves we disown, our insecurities, our fears, our shame, don't disappear. They simply hide in the unconscious, and when they're not faced, they leak out through projection, sabotage, and self-deception. She may genuinely believe she wants love, but in reality, she wants something safer, validation, because affection demands authenticity, and authenticity is risky. Applause is easier. It's clean, public, and distant. Intimacy is messy, private, and painfully close. And so, she remains stuck in a loop, craving something deeper, but only pursuing what's familiar, wanting to be loved, but only accepting admiration, dreaming of connection, but settling for attention. You may find her charismatic, captivating, even intoxicating, but if you try to touch her soul, you'll realize she's not reaching back because she doesn't want to be held. She wants to be seen, and in a world where being visible has replaced being vulnerable, she's not the only one. We are raising generations who are fluent in performance, but illiterate in intimacy. We are trained to attract, not to connect, to impress, not to relate. We chase the metrics, likes, shares, comments, while forgetting the one thing that metrics can't measure, meaning, in this world, applause is currency, but affection, that's a lost art. And until we learn the difference, we'll keep mistaking the sound of claps for the feeling of connection. But they're not the same, and they never were. She wakes up, not with thoughts, but with numbers. The first instinct isn't to feel, but to check. How many likes? How many views? How many story reactions? In a world increasingly defined by screens, her value is measured not by character, but by visibility. Her mornings don't begin with silence or reflection. They begin with performance metrics. We often imagine addiction as something physical, substances, cravings, withdrawals. But there's a quieter addiction, one that's almost invisible because it's everywhere, one that doesn't ruin lives instantly, but dissolves authenticity slowly, day by day. Attention, more specifically, digital attention. Social media didn't just connect us, it changed our psychology. It didn't just give her a platform, it gave her a mirror, one she could control. And control, for someone who feels internally fragmented, is everything. Here's the paradox. She posts selfies. She shares quotes. She documents moments. Not to express herself, but to construct herself. The curated image becomes more real than the lived experience. And yet, she doesn't even realize it, because the high is subtle. It's in the dopamine hit of a notification, the surge of relevance when someone comments, the synthetic warmth of being noticed. Social media offers something reality can't: immediate, filtered, and gamified validation. But behind this glow lies a deep psychological loop. The system wasn't built to connect us. It was built to keep us engaged. And how do you keep someone engaged? Intermittent reinforcement. The most addictive form of reward is the one that's unpredictable. You never know which post will go viral, which outfit will get noticed, which angle will earn praise. So you keep trying. Like a slot machine that occasionally rewards you, social media keeps her hooked. Not because she always wins, but because sometimes she does. And that sometimes is enough to fuel the addiction. Carl Jung spoke of compensation, the psyche's attempt to cover an inner lack with an outer excess. If someone lacks genuine self-worth, they may compensate with exaggerated displays of confidence. If someone fears irrelevance, they may construct an online persona that appears endlessly fascinating. She's not addicted to her phone. She's addicted to who she becomes on the phone. Because there, she's not the insecure girl who doubts her worth. She's admired, envied. She's chosen, but attention is not affection, and being seen is not the same as being understood. Yet in a world where followers are mistaken for friends and views for value, that difference becomes blurry, and dangerously so. She doesn't realize that the spotlight she craves is slowly burning her. Every post is a transaction, authenticity traded for approval. And over time, she starts forgetting who she is without the lens. This isn't just about her. This is systemic. This is cultural. The architecture of our digital world has created a new kind of personality disorder, not defined by traditional psychology, but by modern algorithms, where our sense of self is fractured into highlight reels, where moments are lived less for experience and more for documentation. And so, she becomes a projection of what she thinks the world wants to see, a walking brand, a living filter, a persona without a person. This is the modern Faustian bargain. Sell your soul, not to the devil, but to your audience. And for what? Relevance. But relevance is fleeting. The feed never ends. And as soon as someone newer, hotter, or louder appears, the spotlight moves, she must perform again, sharpen the image, edit the caption, reinvent, because the fear isn't failure, it's invisibility. To not be seen is to not exist. But the irony is, the more she's seen, the less she feels real, because true identity isn't built in the spotlight. It's forged in silence. It's not in how others see you, but in how you see yourself when no one's watching. Carl Jung warned us, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And perhaps that's why so few do, because accepting oneself requires not being seen, at least not immediately. It requires the discomfort of authenticity, the vulnerability of being ordinary, the horror of not performing. But here's the deeper tragedy. She doesn't know how to stop. To leave the spotlight feels like death. To delete the app feels like vanishing. And so she stays, keeps curating, keeps dancing for likes, all the while calling it self-expression, when in truth, it's self-erasure. What looks like confidence is often a coping mechanism. What looks like expression is often a cry. What looks like empowerment is often enslavement to the gaze of others. And until she can break the loop, until she realizes that her worth isn't measured by metrics, she'll remain trapped in a digital masquerade. She doesn't want to go viral. She wants to be loved. But in chasing the spotlight, she's running from the only place love can truly begin, in the quiet, honest, unfiltered self. There's a look she gives when you compliment her, a flash of delight, maybe even surprise, but it never settles. It doesn't reach the core, because it was never about the words. It's about the rush, the moment, the spike in attention. She thrives on validation, not connection, not the quiet comfort of being known, but the sharp thrill of being noticed. Compliments are her oxygen, but confession, that's a foreign language. She's built a life where feedback is filtered, where conversations are aesthetic, and where intimacy is replaced with interaction. To you, she may seem confident, open, even flirtatious, but ask her a question that touches her core, and watch how quickly the room chills. Because vulnerability is dangerous. It requires exposure. It means revealing the parts of her she doesn't control, the unedited, uncurated, and often unloved fragments of herself. And those are the parts she's buried under layers of presentation. Validation is easy. It's fast, impersonal, and addictive. You can get it from 1,000 strangers without offering a single piece of your soul. Vulnerability is the opposite. It's slow, messy, and rare, and it demands everything. Carl Jung believed the shadow, the part of ourselves we suppress, feeds off what we fear in ourselves. For her, that fear is being truly seen beyond the mask. So she masters the art of the surface, the witty banter, the posed spontaneity, the illusion of openness. But when someone tries to go deeper, to peel back the curated self and ask, "Who are you really?" she shuts down, changes the subject, or vanishes completely, because the real self doesn't feel safe. It never has. Often, this dynamic is born in early life, when emotions were met with judgment instead of compassion, when showing need resulted in rejection. Over time, she learned a brutal lesson. Vulnerability equals weakness, and weakness leads to pain. So she adapted. She became someone others admired instead of someone they could truly connect with, someone who excelled in creating impressions, but avoided creating intimacy. In this world, feelings were liabilities, image was power, and validation. It became the drug that numbed the ache of unworthiness. But validation is a trap. It offers just enough to keep you coming back, but never enough to make you whole. It feeds the persona, not the person. And when the applause fades, the silence returns, louder, emptier. Still, she keeps performing. You see it in her relationships. She's magnetic in the beginning, charming, dynamic, emotionally available enough to lure you in. But then comes the distancing, the evasiveness, the subtle walls, not because she's heartless, but because the moment you move past the surface, you threaten the illusion. Vulnerability isn't just hard for her, it's unbearable. To be loved, truly loved, she would have to let herself be seen. All of her, not just the pretty parts, not just the filtered photos and clever captions, but the unpolished, uncertain, deeply human self beneath it all. And that idea terrifies her more than being alone. So instead, she chooses the illusion of closeness over the real thing. She might say she wants love, but her actions reveal something else. She wants reassurance without risk, approval without authenticity, attention without exposure. But deep down, she knows something's wrong. There are moments, brief, quiet moments, when she stares at the screen and feels nothing. When the likes don't land, when the messages don't satisfy, when she's surrounded by people but haunted by isolation, because attention is noisy, but love is quiet, and she's forgotten what silence even feels like. Carl Jung warned us, your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. She has spent years looking outward for validation, for affirmation, for proof that she matters. But that proof is always fleeting until she finds the courage to look inward, to confront her fears, her pain, her shadow. She will remain a prisoner of perception, always performing, never arriving, always adored, never known. This isn't condemnation, it's a calling, because many of us are like her, trained to equate validation with love, conditioned to perform rather than to feel, encouraged to brand ourselves rather than to discover who we really are. And the cost? A generation fluent in expressing everything except truth. But if she dares to break the cycle, if she risks being vulnerable, she might find something far greater than admiration. She might find intimacy, not the kind you post about, but the kind that frees you. And maybe then she'll understand. Validation is a hunger that never ends. But vulnerability, that's where love begins. She's mesmerizing. Her laugh is infectious. Her presence, magnetic. She tells stories that pull you in, looks at you like you're the only person in the room. For a moment, it feels like magic, like you've found someone extraordinary, someone who gets it, someone different. But that moment never lasts, because when the lights dim and the small talk fades, something strange happens. she disappears, not physically, perhaps, but emotionally, spiritually. When the conversation shifts from a playfulness to meaning, from surface to soul, she subtly checks out. Her eyes drift. Her attention thins. Her energy, so bright at the beginning, becomes distant, muted. It's like trying to grab mist, beautiful in form, but impossible to hold. What you thought was connection was charisma. What you felt was chemistry, was charm. It's easy to confuse the two. In a world starved for attention and presence, someone who appears fully engaged can feel like a revelation. But charm is not depth. It's not rooted in substance. It's an art, consciously or unconsciously, crafted to create a feeling, a rush, a high. But like all highs, it crashes. Carl Jung might say this is the dominance of the persona, the carefully constructed mask we present to the world. She's mastered it. She knows how to say the right thing, how to mirror emotions, how to create a sense of intimacy without ever giving herself away. It's not deception, it's defense, because depth requires risk, and risk requires trust. And for someone addicted to attention, trust is dangerous. It asks for vulnerability, for permanence, for the willingness to be known beyond the curated impression. But impressions are safer. She thrives in beginnings, in entrances, in first meetings, first messages, first glances. She's a master of the spark, but terrified of the slow burn, because the longer someone stays, the greater the chance they'll see beyond the performance. And that's what she fears most, that someone will see the hunger behind the charm, the loneliness behind the flirtation, the emptiness behind the smile. This is why her relationships feel intense, then confusing. One moment, she's all in, texting, laughing, sharing. The next, she's gone, cold, detached. You'll wonder what changed. You'll blame yourself, but it wasn't you. It was the moment intimacy started to surface. Her presence is a performance, not because she's insincere, but because she's protecting something fragile, her real self still unhealed. Charm is the armor, and she's worn it so long, she's forgotten there's a person underneath. Carl Jung taught that whatever we avoid in ourselves, we project onto others. If she cannot face her own emotional needs, she will mock yours. If she cannot tolerate her own loneliness, she will drown in distraction. And if she cannot love herself without the mask, she will only seek those who fall for the mask, not the soul. The tragedy, most people never realize the difference. She surrounds herself with admirers, not companions, fans, not friends, lovers, not partners, people who reinforce the illusion, but never challenge it. Because the moment someone asks her to go deeper, to be still, to be real, that person becomes a threat. So she replaces them with someone new, with another beginning, another spark, another chance to feel special without having to be seen. It's an emotional Ponzi scheme, always paying off the last connection with the next. But it can't last forever, because eventually, even she feels the weight in the quiet moments, after the party, after the story's told, after the attention fades. That's when the hollowness creeps in. She wonders why she can't hold on to love, why it always slips away, why people get close, then drift. But she doesn't see the pattern. She builds her connections on sand, charm, novelty, chemistry, and never on the solid ground of vulnerability. Depth requires patience, honesty, stillness. But for someone addicted to attention, stillness feels like death. Yet here's the secret. Stillness is the only place real love grows. In the unremarkable moments, the unspectacular conversations, the quiet, knowing that you can be seen fully and still be chosen. She's never had that. She doesn't even know it's possible. Because she's been so busy dazzling others, she's forgotten how to connect, how to listen without planning a response, how to stay when things get messy, how to love without performing. But it's not too late. The path back to depth isn't dramatic, it's humble, it's slow. It begins with choosing presence over performance, curiosity over control, truth over charm. She doesn't have to be perfect to be loved. She just has to be real. And maybe, just maybe, if she lets go of the need to impress, she'll finally experience what she's been chasing all along. Not admiration, but intimacy. At first, it feels like a dream. She's emotionally present. She listens. She shares personal stories. Her eyes soften when you talk about your pain. You feel heard, maybe even understood. It feels rare, special, but slowly, you begin to notice the pattern. Her emotional availability isn't constant. It's conditional. It emerges only when it benefits her. She's not emotionally available because she wants to connect. She's emotionally available because she wants to be admired for it. It's not about empathy. It's about control. She offers fragments of sincerity, like a dealer hands out samples, just enough to keep you craving more, just enough to convince you she's not like the others. But when you need her, when your emotions become inconvenient or messy, she disappears. Maybe not physically, but spiritually. She detaches, becomes cold, impatient, accusatory. She might say, "You're too emotional," or "You're being dramatic." Suddenly, the openness that once drew you in is used as a weapon to push you away, and you're left confused. Wasn't this the same person who cried with you just weeks ago? Yes, but not because she wanted closeness, because she wanted control over how you perceived her. This is the paradox of selective emotional availability. It looks like vulnerability, but it's performance. It mimics intimacy, but it's transactional. Carl Jung would describe this as a fractured integration of the self, a split between the mask and the soul. She can play the role of the empath, but she hasn't integrated her emotional shadow. She can mirror your feelings, but only when they don't demand anything from her. She confuses emotional resonance with emotional responsibility. In truth, she's terrified of true emotional reciprocity, because that means surrendering power. That means letting go of the upper hand. That means being open when she doesn't want to be. And for someone addicted to attention, power is everything. She's learned that being perceived as emotionally available earns her praise, trust, and even romantic leverage. But that's all it is. Perception. The moment you ask her to actually be there, to stay when it's hard, to listen without judging, to hold space without needing to fix, you'll find yourself alone. because true emotional connection isn't about sharing a few tears. It's about showing up consistently, especially when it's uncomfortable, and she doesn't know how to do that. Or perhaps more accurately, she doesn't want to. She's drawn to emotional conversations that center her. She'll talk about her trauma, her past, her struggles, not to heal, but to be seen as deep, to evoke sympathy, to secure attention. It's not healing, it's branding. Because in a culture where being emotionally intelligent is a flex, emotional availability becomes another identity to curate, another badge, another filter to apply. But the truth, emotional depth has no aesthetic. It doesn't look good on Instagram. It's ugly, unfiltered. It's admitting things like, I was wrong, or I'm scared, or I don't know who I am anymore. That kind of honesty scares her, because it can't be controlled. And if she can't control it, she can't perform it. And if she can't perform it, it doesn't serve her addiction to admiration. Carl Jung warned, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. She would rather act emotionally available than actually be emotionally accountable. She would rather appear wise than become self-aware, because self-awareness requires shadow work. It requires confronting the truth behind the mask, and she's built her whole identity around the mask. So what does this mean for those who love her? It means you'll feel like you're in an emotional maze, let in with warmth, trapped by charm, and left cold. When you seek something real, you'll question your own needs. You'll suppress your own pain. You'll play it cool to keep her close, because she trained you to believe that her version of intimacy is the only one that matters. But emotional availability, when it's real, doesn't fluctuate based on convenience. It's a practice, not a performance. It's not just being there when it's easy. It's being there when it's hard. It's not telling someone what they want to hear. It's telling them what's true, even when it's uncomfortable. Real emotional connection means mutual risk, and until she's ready to take that risk, to offer presence without performance, compassion without control, she will remain emotionally distant, even in relationships that look perfect from the outside, because emotional connection is not a trick. It's a surrender, and surrender terrifies the one addicted to being seen, but never known. So the next time she tells you a beautiful story about her past, or cries during a deep conversation, ask yourself, does this moment bring us closer? Or does it make her feel admired? That single question may reveal the truth beneath the performance, and perhaps the distance beneath the tears. At first it seems intoxicating. The way she looks at you, the subtle smirk, the late-night texts laced with intensity, the way she says she's never felt this way before. It feels powerful, like passion, like you're the chosen one, like she's opened a door to a part of her no one else has seen. But beneath the heat lies something colder, control. She doesn't want to love, she wants to win, and she's learned to weaponize affection like a master tactician. A casual compliment becomes a tool, a tender touch, a tactic. Every word, every glance, every silence, it's all calculated, even when it seems spontaneous. This isn't love. This is a strategy, a performance where she plays the seductress, the muse, the dream girl, only as long as she remains on top. The moment you stop chasing, the moment you stop feeding her sense of superiority, the passion fades. The fire turns to frost, because for her, desire only exists when she has the upper hand. Carl Jung believed that when people are unaware of their shadow, it operates unconsciously, manifesting in manipulation, projection, and dominance. She doesn't see her actions as controlling. She calls it chemistry. She mistakes her power plays for love languages, but it's not love. It's leverage. She creates drama and calls it depth. She gives just enough to keep you emotionally invested, then pulls away to watch you scramble. She confuses your insecurity with devotion. If you get too comfortable, she destabilizes the balance, just to feel wanted again. This is not affection, it's addiction, not to you, but to the rush of being pursued. She knows how to provoke desire. She withholds approval like currency. One day you're adored, the next you're questioned. The sudden emotional whiplash keeps you off balance, doubting yourself, seeking her reassurance, chasing the version of her you first met. But that version wasn't real. It was bait. The truth is, passion without emotional safety is not intimacy. It's a game, a high-stakes dance of dominance disguised as connection. She wants the thrill of power, not the vulnerability of presence. She wants to feel irreplaceable, not equal. And so, she creates cycles of emotional chaos, moments of intense closeness followed by abrupt distance, emotional flooding followed by cold detachment. It keeps her in control. It keeps you chasing, and it ensures that your focus never shifts from her. You become a mirror reflecting her desirability, not a partner in a mutual relationship. And she needs that mirror, because underneath the performance, there's a terrifying belief she's never voiced, not even to herself. If I stop performing, I will no longer be loved. So she doesn't stop. Carl Jung warned, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But for her, true acceptance would mean surrendering control. It would mean being loved without manipulation, wanted without power plays. It would mean being seen not for her allure, but for her humanity. And she doesn't trust that kind of love. So she replaces it with passion, because passion can be faked. Passion can be maintained from a distance. Passion doesn't require softness. It requires tension, and tension she can control. You might even hear her say things like, "I just need excitement," or "I get bored easily." But what she's really saying is, emotional equilibrium feels unsafe. The moment things become calm, secure, and equal, she feels vulnerable. And to her, vulnerability means weakness. So she breaks the balance before it settles. She'll test you, withdraw from you, flirt with someone else in front of you, not because she doesn't care, but because she needs to know you do. She needs to see you react, to prove that she still holds emotional leverage, because if she loses that leverage, she loses the illusion of safety. But the irony? These games she plays to feel powerful only deepen her sense of insecurity, because true connection, the kind that lasts, cannot be coerced. It cannot be maintained through power. It must be chosen freely, every day. And as long as she's playing games, no one will ever truly choose her. They'll only choose the mask, so she keeps seducing, performing, dominating, while secretly aching to be loved without conditions. But until she trades passion for presence, tension for trust, and performance for partnership, she will remain in a cycle of emotional warfare, disguised as romance, and so will you. This isn't about blaming her. It's about understanding the pattern, because the only way to escape the game is to stop playing and to remember, true love doesn't keep you guessing. It keeps you grounded. There's a moment in every relationship, every friendship, every situationship, where the glitter fades, the jokes aren't as exciting, the texts slow down, the novelty wears off, and something more real begins to ask for space. This is the moment she vanishes. Not always literally, but emotionally, spiritually, sometimes silently, sometimes violently, picking a fight, creating drama, making you the villain. But always, she leaves when the spotlight dims, because without that spotlight, she doesn't know who she is. In the beginning, she thrives. New attention, new followers, new praise. It fills the void, silences the noise, gives her a brief hit of meaning, but it's all borrowed, rented, dependent on performance, proximity, and public perception. And when the stage grows quiet, when the likes slow down, the texts aren't poetic, the conversations turn mundane, she feels like she's disappearing, because deep down, she was never building a relationship. She was building an audience. Carl Jung called this the starving soul, the part of us that seeks external energy to survive, because it hasn't yet learned how to nourish itself. When someone vanishes, as soon as the spotlight fades, what they're telling you isn't that you're boring. They're telling you they don't exist without attention. They mistake being seen for being loved. They've tied their worth to a kind of visibility that's conditional, fleeting, and never enough. So when admiration fades, they fade with it. She might say she lost feelings, that the spark is gone. But what's really gone is the mirror, the reflection she used to define herself. And rather than face the void left behind, she moves on to the next admirer, the next beginning, the next temporary high. You'll notice the pattern in the wreckage: half-built relationships, people who still wonder what went wrong, stories that begin with intensity and end without closure. This is the tragedy of attention addiction. It doesn't allow for endurance, for the long, often unremarkable process of growing with another person. It only thrives in the flash of first impressions, not the weight of real connection. She doesn't know how to stay, because staying requires stillness, and stillness demands an identity not shaped by applause. But she's never known that version of herself. Maybe she's never met her. She spent so long performing, on social media, in relationships, even to herself, that she fears the silence of authenticity, the quiet space where no one is watching, and yet she's still worthy. That silence feels like death, because it means facing the one thing she's been running from: herself. Carl Jung wrote, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." She's still dreaming, still living through curated versions of reality. still running from inner work by sprinting toward outer validation, still clinging to connection, but only when it costs her nothing, only when the lighting is flattering and the narrative is in her control. So she vanishes when love asks for effort, when people ask for consistency, when connection stops being about her and starts becoming mutual. Because mutuality is terrifying. It means being accountable. It means admitting when you're wrong. It means showing up even when you're not feeling adored. And she's not ready for that. So she ghosts. She detaches. She blames. Anything to avoid being seen without the performance. And if you're the one left behind, you'll question yourself. Was I too much? Too boring? Not exciting enough? No, you were simply real. And she wasn't ready for real. Because real doesn't always sparkle. Real doesn't trend. Real doesn't fill the ego. It humbles it, but here's the truth. The spotlight was never the problem. Wanting attention is human. Wanting to be seen, celebrated, loved, that's natural. The danger is when that becomes your identity. When your existence depends on applause, because applause always ends. And the people who truly love you stay when the curtain falls. So if she disappears when things get quiet, understand this. It's not your fault. It's her fear. Fear of being ordinary. Fear of being still. Fear of being truly known. Because being known means being vulnerable. And for someone who only knows how to be seen, vulnerability feels like exposure. But exposure is where healing begins. And until she faces that silence, until she lets herself be still and not disappear, she will never know the kind of love that doesn't need a stage, only the kind that ends the moment the audience claps their last applause. What we often mistake for vanity is, more often, a cry, not a loud, desperate one, but a quiet, relentless whisper. See me, validate me, tell me I matter. Attention addiction is not about arrogance. It's about emptiness. In psychological terms, attention addiction operates much like substance addiction. There's a stimulus, likes, compliments, praise, and it triggers a reward, dopamine. That reward reinforces the behavior. Over time, the threshold rises. What once felt fulfilling becomes routine. So you seek more and more until you're no longer chasing attention for joy, but just to feel normal. Carl Jung warned of this unconscious compulsion when he wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." Attention becomes a distraction from the shadow self, the unhealed child, the wounded ego, the shame buried beneath the curated persona. The more disconnected someone is from their true self, the more desperate they become to build an artificial self for the world to love. And in today's culture, that artificial self is rewarded. Social media doesn't just enable attention seeking, it monetizes it. It gamifies identity. You can literally track your perceived worth in numbers, likes, views, followers, retweets. The screen becomes a mirror, but one that reflects only what the world likes, not what you are. For someone predisposed to low self-worth, this becomes a vicious loop. They become addicted to being perceived. Even if that perception is a lie, it's safer to be adored for a mask than rejected for your truth. And that's the tragedy, because deep connection, the kind that heals, the kind that builds lives, is not possible through performance. It requires stillness, discomfort, and realness. All things attention addiction trains you to avoid. At its core, attention addiction is a fear of insignificance. It's the belief that if no one's watching, I don't exist. But you do. You exist in silence, in stillness, in the quiet conversations that don't trend, in the moments no one sees and no one claps for. You exist when you are not being consumed, and so does she. But until she believes that, until we believe that, we will keep mistaking applause for love, and love will keep slipping through our fingers.